Hey, this is Jono from Baron Carta, and this is a commentary on Out of Time. Let's go. You know, I'm pretty excited to talk about Out of Time because it's a really important song in the formation of Baron Carta. You know, when I was thinking about what this project was going to be, I really wanted to blend two very different styles as its kind of foundation. One of which is AC/DC, like good time, rock and roll, the kind of music that you can listen to on a jukebox in a bar. And then just really heavy, powerful metal, kind of like a Nevermore, kind of a Pantera, you know, that kind of style. And to see what happens, and then really to kind of pull in any kind of influences that seem relevant, like Muse or even Daft Punk or whatever. I don't care, as long as it sounds musically interesting. That's the most important thing. So when I started putting some of these ideas together, I came up to my studio and started writing some riffs, and the very first couple of riffs in Out of Time popped out first. And it's probably the most accessible arena rock song on Step Into the Plague, and that's the reason why it's the first song, because I think it's an easy song to kind of lower yourself into the water with. So let's give it a listen. Let's grab me earbuds, pop it in, make sure that this is connected, and let's go. You know, even in this early part of the song, I wanted to kind of make it a little bit atmospheric, and that's one of the reasons why you've got this kind of like clean guitar with a little echo on it. But importantly, I don't want the bass in Baron Carta to just be something that fattens up the guitars like in so many bands. You know, I love bands like Iron Maiden and Cannibal Corpse, where the bass guitar is a personality in its own right, and it plays a key function in the music. And you know, even these little bass flourishes at the beginning, that's one thing. But when the guitars come in, my goal here was that the bass is just this kind of driving force behind it that's just kind of dragging the guitars along and pulling them forward kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm talking about, where that bass goes down. It's just bum, 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 bum. It's kind of keeping it going. This is also two different guitar riffs that kind of are playing off each other. And I like the idea of that kind of sound of one guitar riff kind of keeping a consistent tonality while the other one's kind of wrapping its head around the rest of it. The other thing to note is that, you know, the musicians will care about this, and those of you who don't play music probably won't care. But I tune my guitar down to drop A. So like a normal guitar, it's got 6 strings. A lot of metalheads play on a 7-string guitar like I do. And then that bottom string, which is normally a B, I drop that even further down to A. So it sounds really grindy, and I love that sound. And I actually first heard that sound really when I started listening to Cannibal Corpse, which I'm a huge fan of. And just they'd hit these chords and they just grind out. And I don't even know I think they play in B, but it was when I talked to a friend of mine called Ted, who actually runs a gym. And he was like, dude, with that kind of style, you got to play in drop A. It's going to sound amazing, which is cool. But the downside of drop A is that then the bass guitars drop down, and then things can get a little bit muddy and waffly in the low end. And that's one of the reasons why I was so thrilled when Jacob was able to mix this, Jacob Hansen, because he got a lot of clarity with the guitars and the bass and the drums and everything else that's going down in that lower register. So at this point in the song, we're still fairly high up, but in a second, you'll hear it get lower, but you can still hear the bass and the guitar and everything going on. You know, Out of Time was the first song that Ralf sang on for Baron Carta. You know, like a little bit of backstory is that I've been a huge fan of Primal Fear forever. And I'd always associated Ralf Scheepers as just like one of those people that, you know, is just a legend when it comes to singing. Like everyone talks about Rob Halford and Bruce Dickinson. They're amazing singers, but Ralf Scheepers for me is just like one of the best out there. And when I was writing the songs, I was actually thinking like of Ralph's vocals in the songs. And I was originally going to be singing on all of these songs. In fact, I went to the studio to record a bunch of them. And then I realized I just couldn't hit the register that Ralph's got. Shock horror. So I'd already reached out to him and I did some vocal lessons with him. And I couldn't believe that he was going to give me lessons. And I did some lessons. We actually ended up becoming pretty good friends. So when I reached out to him about singing on some of these songs, I was blown away when he said, sure, I'll do it. And I gave all kind of caveats of like, I won't be offended if you say no. I'm sure you get asked this all the time. But when I was doing singing lessons with him, he said to me like, let me hear you sing on one of your songs. And it was this song, it was on Out of Time, that I sang over Skype to him. And I think the reason why he agreed to do it was because, first of all, we have a good relationship, but also he'd heard this song. So this song, I think, helped to kind of get Ralf on board. But when he sent the first set of vocals over, I was expecting, the first recordings, me to have all kinds of changes I wanted him to make, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. He nailed it first time. I couldn't believe it. There was very, very little. I think there was only one thing I ever asked him to add or to change. It's just a remarkable talent. This next bit that's coming up, one of the things I'm a big fan of in music is, instead of just hitting the listener with a chorus or, kind of the big moment in the song, is actually building up to it. It's taking them there, giving them a bit of a teaser and kind of building the tension to get there. So I'm a big fan of pre-choruses. And this pre-chorus is very, very simple. It's just kind of rising up a scale. But I think it makes you feel like you're going somewhere before we kind of get in there with the chorus. The pre-chorus thing I think is cool because, like I say, instead of just dumping a chorus on someone, it's a little bit of an appetizer for it. But the tricky thing there is you've got to make sure that the chorus is big. You can't have the appetizer of the pre-chorus before, if you have a pretty, mundane chorus. And again, when I was writing this, I was hearing Ralf in my mind, and I was a little nervous because I could hear what I could hear of what I wanted the vocal melody to be. And I'd sung it on a track that I sent him to give him a sense of what I was thinking. But the power that you hear when he sings this chorus is just remarkable. I mean, he's got such a powerful voice across so many different octaves. It really, I think, is a very, very powerful chorus. And I credit all of that down to Ralf. Something else which I just want to make a note of is, originally when I wrote these songs, I programmed all of the drums in Superior Drummer. So I kind of arranged them all. And I was originally, up until kind of late in the process, planning on just having those as the drums that you'd hear on the EP. But a number of people said, dude, you got to record proper drums in this. Like, one is my friend Tom, who plays guitar in Carcass. Even my dad said it. I was like, Jono, you got to have a proper drummer playing on this. So Jacob Hansen was mixing and mastering this, and he asked the drummer from his band Pyramaze to come and play drums on it, Morten. And he just nailed it, because again, what I was going for here was not over complexity. Like, one of the things I love about AC/DC is the drumming is just, and I didn't want this to sound like a death metal album. I didn't want it to have loads and loads of complicated drums in there, but I wanted it to be exciting enough that it wasn't boring, because you could say that the AC/DC drums are a bit boring. So I think he applies just the right amount of, fruitiness to the music. And I dig him. He's an amazing drummer. He's a lovely guy as well. This is like, I'll kneel your Satan. Ralf improvised that. Love it. This next section is, again, a concept of a build-up. I wanted it to have this kind of musical, like a little bit of a musical flourish before we get into this kind of, again, like a different kind of pre-chorus, like this kind of a chant behind it with Ralf singing. I'll get to it. I'll talk about it more. So musically, this is very, very simple. It's just a simple melody, but again, just listen to the bass that's behind it. It's just plowing on, bum, 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 bum. With this simple guitar melody, it just sounds like there's a lot of oxygen in this part of the song, which I love. And then when the vocals come in, it kind of, like I say, it leads you towards that next part of the song. Where you hear those time, time, time. That was another Ralf Scheepers improvisation. Love it. Gonna be honest with you, the slight egomaniac that's inside of me. I hope I've not got an egomaniac, but if there is an egomaniac that's inside of me, I can imagine playing this live and having the audience going like, stamp and stick. That'd be killer. That little vocal bit there, where he layered together that harmony, Ralf did so much of that. So when I sent over the original kind of vocal ideas for the melody, what I said to Ralf is the same thing that I said to Morten, who played drums. Like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. This is how I hear it in my head. This is how I'd like it to sound, but this is your art too. I want you to be proud of it. I want you to feel like it's important to you. And I want you to have the creative freedom to be able to make it your own. Okay. And, Morten did a bunch of that with his drums and like little kind of fills and, nuances in the drums. And Ralf did that a lot with the melodies. And he certainly does it here, but he really, really does it in Act 1 Duty. I mean, his melodies and his harmonies there are just remarkable. So. Just before we get into the solo, this was a real last minute change in the recording process, because I'd written the solo for this. I kind of lashed it together, if I'm being honest, and it sounded pretty decent. And I'd listened to the song so many times, the recording, that I was planning on leaving it in there, because it become essentially the song to me, even though it was essentially a rough solo while I was writing it. But midway through the recording process, I re-recorded all the bass, because I got, a Dingwall NG3 bass, and it sounded so much better. So I re-recorded all the bass. We had Morten record all of the drums. And it got to a point now where I was like, you know what? I can't do everything else perfect and then just leave this kind of half-written solo in there. So I ended up re-recording at the end. There's a lot of wah in this, and I love wah. I think wah's a great effect, but the problem with wah is that it's often a little overused, where people just wow, 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 wow. And I wanted this to be a much subtler use of wah in this. So it tends to be used really to make the notes sing a little bit. I'll try to gesture when that's happening as we're listening to it. this bit's a good example. Like the wah is very subtle and in this. In fact, you could be forgiven for not realizing there's actually a lot of wah on it, but it just adds a little slight looseness to it. I think if I was playing this without the wah, it would sound very flat. And wah just gives it that like nice little tonality, which I like. Couple of thoughts on this. So I wanted this to have a big outro at the end of the song to kind of really be driving. But the problem with repeating the same riff over and over again is that it gets boring. So the beginning of this, one thing that Jacob added was this kind of note that's ringing out over the top of this. He rang it out for a lot longer, which I love. I think it sounds really good. But two things happened on this. I overlaid the clean guitar to give it a little bit more richness partway through, but also Morten subtly changes the drums on the background. You won't notice it unless you're listening to it, but it really adds a lot of effect to it. The vibe I was going with on this, actually, when I was writing this part of the song, a police siren went past my house and I heard a woo, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool to have like a siren-y style noise over the top of it? And that's kind of where this came from. Here's where the clean guitars come in. I just want to really underline this because this is the difference between a producer who really knows what they're doing and a producer who doesn't. If you listen to that wailing sound, listen to when it kind of is gone, just listen to how it reverberates around in the background. It sounds incredible. This is all Jacob Hansen. And you're going to hear Morten change his drum beat in a second, which kind of pulls it towards the finish line. And that really long ringing out of that sound, like that, ooh, that's all Jacob again. I just think it adds so much atmosphere as it fades out. And that's it. So that is Out of Time. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, look, with every song you want to improve it, you want to change it, you want to make it better. But I'm pretty happy with how it sounds. I think it's a good first song to go on, Step Into the Plague. And it's very different to a lot of the other Baron Carta songs, but it's the kind of style which I am enjoying exploring. So there you go. Go and listen to Step Into the Plague by Baron Carta. It's out right now. And let me know what you think.